I'd like to call to order the Planning Commission regular meeting for October 16th, 2025. Ask the clerk to do roll call.
Oliver.
Here.
Patrick.
Here.
Clark.
Here.
Lachey.
Present.
Marina.
Here.
And Mason.
Here. Yeah, quorum, which moves us to agenda item number 2, which is the approval of the agenda. Everyone had a copy of it. Any comments or questions? If not,
Move to approve. Second.
second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Moves us to item 3, the approval of the minutes. In our packet, we had the September 18th, 2025 minutes for our meeting. Everyone had an opportunity to review those. Any comments? Any changes? And do we have a motion to approve?
Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the September 18th meeting.
Support? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none. Minutes are approved. Moves us on to item number 4, which is the public comments on agenda items. At this time, if you're in the room, you can come up to the podium. If you're online, please raise your hand. This is an opportunity where you can speak for up to 3 minutes on any item that's on the agenda. Just need to tell us what agenda item you're speaking to and give us your name and address at the time that you begin speaking. We have no one in the room. We have no one online, so we will close out public comments. Now moves us down to item 5, our item for new business, which is a public hearing for 510 Butler Street for a special land use and site plan review. So following the public hearing, we will go ahead and call the public hearing to order. And at this time, ask for a summary of this by the zoning administrator.
So the applicant is requesting special land use approval to expand the existing bed and breakfast to include 2 additional existing structures as accessory guest accommodations. There's no exterior expansion or physical modifications proposed as part of the request. The applicant has provided the square footage for each guest room, all of which exceed the minimum size requirements. In order for the 2 structures to be considered accessory to the principal bed and breakfast located at 510 Butler, the 2 subject lots will need to be combined, and the applicant has acknowledged and agreed to this requirement. The applicant has also addressed the cooking facility located in the rear common area of the bungalow and confirmed that they will not be available for guest use. We've provided a sample motion on page 16, and if that motion is to be used, conditions 1 and 3 can be disregarded from that now.
It is in the packet, or the packet that Sarah sent out.
Yes.
Had the revised.
Yes.
It's 1 and 3 as well as, I guess you could leave 2 in there, but if they already have met compliance with number 2.
They haven't actually filled out the application for it to be
Okay.
divided or combined yet, so it should still be a condition,
Okay.
but they have acknowledged it.
Number 2 is about fire extinguishers, is that still?
That's what.
Yeah, the fire department would still have to take a look at that.
Yeah, because you said on 16, but if you actually go to page, which is now, I think,
Yeah,
at 27, you would have that, you have the same recommendation, but it's got the red in there where it talks about 1 and 3 being done and then being compliant with 2, but you still leave it in there. Okay.
yes.
All right. Thank you for the summary. At this time, we'll ask if the applicant would like to speak. I don't think he's online, is he?
Who are you asking about?
If the applicant wants.
Oh.
This guy was,
Is that mine?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm the architect working with the owners and with Chris Corey, the attorney who helped us fill out the brief, and I see Martin Horner's in the room. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Could we get your name and for the record, please?
Right. My name is Michael Wachter.
Thank you.
Sure.
which takes us then to Does anybody have any questions for him right now?
No, I think it's pretty
So
straightforward.
do I. Okay. Then it takes us now to public comments regarding this application. Once again, if you're in the room and would like to speak in regards to this application for 510 Butler, come up to the podium. And if you're online, please raise your hand and we'll recognize you. We have none in the room, no one online. So we will close out the public comment section of this, which then moves us on to the commission deliberation.
I thought
Yes.
I agree with what you guys said. I think it's very straightforward. I mean, we've seen this so many times, so.
And we kind of knew that when we were talking about the expansion of the accessory guest units, and one of the things that would happen down the road would be the idea of putting the two lots into one. So that makes sense to me. So the combined, I didn't have an issue with. It's already been rezoned to where they're both in the same zone. So I thought it seems,
Property looks fabulous. Walked by, after the chili
Property's
cooked off, looks great.
and like I said, I think I mentioned at the end of last meeting, what they've done, you know, with the guest rooms and that, the way they finished it and the property, when you get to the back, it's beautiful. Very nicely done.
I do have one question now, if I may.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm looking at the Mary Street property. What you're now calling the amenity space? I'm looking at your diagram. So what you're calling the amenity space, is that what used to be the garage, and what are you going to be using it for?
It was the garage for 120 Mary Street. It is now the pool house for the small spa pool that's in the rear yard.
There's a pool in here outside of it.
Right.
Is the pool on the diagram somewhere and I'm not seeing
Yeah, the
it?
pool actually sits.
It may be really light in that version that you're looking at. The original one that went in there was a little bit darker.
Okay, I'm seeing,
But you can kind of see, it's that.
I'm seeing.
Yeah.
So the amenity space is a pool house and will not be lodging.
It is not lodging. No, it's support for the rest of the property.
Okay. Again, just so that's clear on the record. Thank you.
Yeah, I think when we approved it, we allowed for two.
Say what?
When we approved the ordinance changes, it allowed for you to have two accessory,
Exactly.
accessory guest on the dwelling. Yep. Very good. Any other deliberation or questions?
Mr. Chair, I move to conditionally approve the special land use and site plan request to allow the expansion of the Wickwood Inn Bread and Breakfast by incorporating two existing structures, accessory guest accommodations, and including the lot and buildings at 120 Mary into the principal facility at 510 Butler. This motion is based on compliance with the B&B requirements of section 154.022, subsection R, satisfaction of site plan approval standards of section 154.063, and the positive findings related to the special land use standards of approval in section 154.082 that are documented in the staff memo dated October 10th, 2025. The following conditions apply to this approval. Installation of all required smoke detectors and fire extinguishers shall be completed before occupancy in accordance with section 154.022, R, N, 2, and the lots at 510 Butler and 120 Mary shall be combined. And the proposal shall be approved by all other city departments as applicable.
A second.
We have a motion that's been made and seconded. I'll ask the clerk now to do voice.
Dick,
Yes.
Baldwin,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Lache,
Yes.
Miro,
Yes.
and Manson.
Yes. Congratulations, you guys.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
That's faster than the last time they came.
Much faster.
Thank you,
It only
guys.
took you only took you 3 or 4 months to get to this point, but
I know there were a lot of visits to see you guys. They were enjoyable though.
it's like I said, we're just I'm pleased to have it as part of the community. Beautiful job.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Great.
All right, that moves us onto our old business items. First one being the master plan discussion and continuation of discussion regarding the open house and survey results. I see David is online and he obviously sent over to us a summary, which all of us had in our packets. We had a chance to look at. And then recently, most people probably haven't seen it yet, but there's an email. Did that go out to everyone, Grayson?
Nope, that's just it.
You will get an email, I think, that has all the questions as well as the responses to each of the survey questions. So if you want to see it in detail, that will be coming after this meeting is over.
And we will be posting that online too for public access.
Oh, good. Does it have the written in comments as well? Requests.
Yeah.
Oh, it does. Good.
Yeah.
Okay, that request came up at the council meeting on Tuesday, so
See the written in ones?
make sure they were included so public has access to them.
Yeah, that's a good idea. All right, David, do you want to kind of take over and kind of walk through what you have here, and then we can kind of have discussions on where we might want to go from here?
Sure. Yep. As mentioned, I did send out the full survey data responses. So that's about 134 pages worth of responses, charts and tables, and a lot of good data there. And the open-ended responses are very interesting. So that you have some very positive, some somewhat negative, but overall, I think it's a really good a comprehensive look at what folks are thinking about in the community. And I think this data is really going to go a long way, especially as we get into topic-specific conversations. So as we get into environmental questions or housing or downtown, I think we can go back to the survey, check through the data, cross-tabulate results, and be able to really dive deeper as we have those topic-specific conversations. So as mentioned in the summary report, we had 386 responses, which was great. As you remember, the waterfront survey, we had about 300 for both the visual preference and the community survey for the waterfront. So this was better responding at 386. We had 222 that identified as full-time or part-time residents. However, in a separate question, we asked it similarly of specifically, are you full-time? Are you part-time? Do you live elsewhere? There was 158 as full-time and 72 as part-time. So that was 230. So there's a little bit of discrepancy with how people answer the question. Sometimes you can get tripped up depending on how the question is asked. So that's why there's a discrepancy between 222 identifying as full-time or part-time versus 230 responding to those questions individually. So, but anyway, in terms of full-time residents, I think we have a statistically significant sample size. So I think that's our goal was to get at least over 150 for it to be statistically significant for residents. We have a lot of other participation as well. I think we had, I had to see, I thought we had maybe 80 or so business or property owners, but we can go through that specifically. We had about half of the participants were over 60. We had 39%, which were between 40 and 59. The gender representation was very balanced. And then when we get to the results themselves, I think a lot of it reinforces the conversations we've had over the past months and years. The reasons why folks live in the city, small town character, close to rivers and Lake Michigan, and arts and culture. And then when folks were defining that small town community character, they had said that it's a walkable downtown, there's mom and pop shops, arts and culture, and quaint small scale cottages and homes, and walkable neighborhoods. So a lot of topics that we've discussed over the past several months and years. And overall, then the top priorities for the city, the top four, number one was a vibrant, strong, attractive downtown that maintains small town charm. 2, a welcoming and inclusive community. 3, safe and accessible sidewalks, crosswalks, and pathways. And 4, environmental sustainability and resiliency. So I think we had a lot of good data. I'm looking forward to hearing your responses as you're able to really work through the 134 pages worth of data. I think as we do this, I posed the question in the memo is let me know as we continue through this process, what type of cross tabulation analysis you'd like to see. So for instance, we may want to see how business owners responded to a certain question, or full-time residents versus part-time residents. So we can look at this data in a lot of different ways. As you have time to work through those pages and read the open-ended responses, just think about those questions and how you'd like us to dig a little bit deeper. But overall, I think the survey, I think we're pretty successful in getting the word out and getting responses, even though it was a long survey, as you all are aware. We had great turnout, even though it was pretty lengthy. I did put a general overview of the open house. So we had, I think we had 28 participants that signed in. I think there were more that participated that were, there for the events that evening, or that just missed the sign-in table. So we probably had 30 or 40, participants overall. And similarly, we heard a lot of the similar comments about what people love, what people want more or less of, the future, and top priorities. So I'm just looking at the top priorities from the dot voting. I think 3 of them were similar to what three of the top 4 in the online survey. So interesting to make the comparison there. But overall, I'm just interested to hear your thoughts on the preliminary survey results, as well as your experience at the open house. I want to thank everyone for being there and helping out. That's always really helped to staff and consultants that you guys all jumped in and were able to staff each station and have those conversations. So and I did survive the preserve, enhance, transform station. I know I was punished by having to man that station, but I happily did so. So. And then again, as I think over the next meeting, we can talk about the scope and the specific milestones and steps of the process. We can chat about that a bit tonight, but I think for next month we can maybe have a more formal proposal about how we move forward over the next 6 to 8 months to get this project completed.
Perfect. Thoughts of anyone's from what was included in the packet?
I didn't see any surprises in the survey results. I mean, it was pretty much lined up with what I would have expected to see. So I think that's good. I look forward to seeing the detailed data, but that was my first impression.
Same here, yeah, it's a great summary, about what I expected to hear,
Which was pleasant.
which is good. Yeah.
Yes.
Because I think we were all wondering, many times you come in here and we're kind of feel like we're much more involved in the city. And, you just always, you have your own thoughts, but then when you get this type of survey results, you're like, well, you really do, or have the ability to kind of anticipate.
Validation.
Yeah. And so there wasn't any big surprises to me.
No, I agree. I'm looking forward to some of the written ones. Maybe there's some ideas there that are outside of my box. So it'll be good to see.
The one thing, David, I would like, and you already mentioned, I think we might have talked about this briefly at the open house. I would like to see a comparison of some of the survey responses that we had from business owners versus the full and part-time residents. Because when I looked through, we had about 10% of the respondents was business owners. And I'd like to see how do they align? Because it would be great if we see that even the business owners are kind of aligning on the same items. And so I think that, since we did have, 10% of the respondents, that's like 30, some of them, that were businesses, it should give us an idea. And my guess is a lot of those are going to somewhat line up, maybe a few that are slightly different, but it'd be information I kind of would like to see. But otherwise, everything else, I'll go through the 134 pages to see what we can find that's in there. But I feel pretty good. I didn't really think I needed a whole lot of more segmentation, other than possibly that comparison. Because the one thing I can't tell when we're going through the survey, you can't see the responses of just the business owners. So you'd have to be able to pull those out, which I know you have that data, David.
On that point, if there is a business owner who also lives in town, is that split out somehow? Or I don't remember how the question was. Would somebody necessarily was it I only get to check one box and I have to choose if I'm a business owner or a resident? Or how's that, David, how's that work?
For that scenario, we would be able to determine that, because that question is selecting all as applicable. So someone could say that was the question specifically, what is your interest in the city of Saugatuck? Choose as many as applicable. You can, and the answer choices were you're a full-time or part-time resident, you work here, you own property, you own a business, you're a tourist or a visitor, or other. So we can, I conceptually, we could pull who is a full-time resident and who owns a business. So I think we could look at different scenarios. We should be able to do
I
that.
think, I'm sorry, I just don't want to exclude one bucket of people because they could only check one. That's why I wasn't
Yeah,
sure about
they
that.
could, because it said choose as many as applicable, so that's why when I was looking, like on that question, it said, you guys don't have this yet, but was 344 people who answered that, and I think David has said right around 12%. That was business owners, so that would put it someplace around 35 to 40. That actually selected business owner.
46 participants are business owners, 13.37%.
And I think it'd be, once again, it'd be great if we kind of see that they're right in line with everyone else. And I don't expect there'd be a big difference.
Another,
But we don't know if they're
Go ahead.
local business owners.
say what?
We don't know if they're local business owners.
Well, I guess that's what he was saying though, is we could look at it because they could check multiple. So if we looked and said, okay, did they check full-time and business owner or part-time and business owner or just business owner?
And we did specifically ask if you own a business in the city of Saugatuck. So we
We did.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's in the
okay.
city. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
there
what I
you go.
meant.
Never mind. I take that back.
That's the 46 that checked. They might have checked other boxes, but they at least checked that they own a business.
correct.
David, also, you mentioned in your memo that a majority, and I don't know the percentage, were favorable of creating a DDA. The other two open-ended questions off the top of my head were one about annexation and also about forming our own police department. Do you have?
I can tell you in a second.
Well, somebody can. Okay, I don't care who. But I mean, you mentioned the DDA, but you didn't mention those two other open-ended questions. I just wondered what kind of responses we got on those.
Do you remember what questions those were? They were late in their survey, weren't they?
Yeah, I'm see if I can narrow it down.
I don't have the survey in front of me. No, I'm sorry.
I was just trying to remember where.
Okay.
they fell.
Okay, I found it here. So so the annexation question, we had 13.36% strongly agree that we should consider expanding limits. 16.25 somewhat agree, and then 41% were unsure. So a lot of folks were, I think, the most 113 said they were unsure.
Sure.
But we had about 29% that were agreed or strongly agreed.
And then about the police department, I think it's in the same area of the survey.
Yep. So so that one, the city should consider establishing its own police department. 22% strongly agree, 16% somewhat agree, and then 26% unsure.
Thank you. And I'll just make one comment, additional comment. I had somebody come up to me at the open house and strongly tell me that he thought the questions were biased. And so we had a little bit of a discussion about that, including the fact that I said, well, you can answer strongly disagree to every single one of any question you think is biased one way or the other. So I'm just telling you, I pushed back because I thought we did a great job with the survey. And, but there was at least one person in town who thought that the survey was biased.
Indicate.
There was a response or two like that in the open-ended questions, but there were also many more that were very appreciative of the survey. So it was interesting because I think anything you do, you're going to have people praise it or criticize it. And I think we got much more positive comments about the opportunity to participate. So.
And that came up at the open house too. People appreciated A, the open house, and B, no, I'm not going to answer your question about which way they thought it was biased because that gets into the weeds that I don't care to get into. Thank you. But I'm just telling you, so.
Okay. The only other thought I had on that was we did have in how I would respond to that if someone's watching or if it comes up again. I think we spent 3 meetings that are all on video and all these conversations happened in the public and online and I think we really worked through each question and there was
Right.
someone if they were open to do so they could review those videos and watch our decision making process and how we developed each question. So I think if you watch that you'd probably see that there was no bias in where we were heading on the questions.
Thanks.
Yeah, and the one thing, that I did notice, David, and we can touch upon it a little bit, maybe in the master plan. When I did have some people who ask, what was a DB, DDA? It's like we got a favorable response for it, but many people really don't know exactly what it would entail. What is the benefit to it? What's the risk, to it as far as revenues to the city and how are the proceeds to be used? I think, that's probably the one question that somebody brought up. They said, well, when the way it was phrased, it was like, would you be in favor of establishing this to help promote business? And they're like, oh, yeah, sure. But they don't really know what the details would be.
Good point.
Be a good one to see where the business is answered as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that was the only other comment that I had from anyone at the open house that I thought was, I don't know if it came up, because I haven't seen the open house's responses, and truthfully, I was talking to Grayson earlier today and I said, there's times where I kind of get confused as to what all is entailed between like some of the TIFs and some of the, obviously you got the chambers and then you got the DDA and, and how you establish it and what are the pros and cons. But we would want to kind of, if we were going to be incorporating some of those as suggestions, we need to kind of educate ourselves as well as the public on what it would really mean.
Yep.
Any other ideas that you'd like to share with David at this time?
No, that's it for now. I think we're really going to have to, fall back on this data as we talk about specific issues. And I think, like you said, we can look at this in all different ways. I can also see if you can have access to this as well to be able, because the SurveyMonkey online application for this, it actually gives you like an AI level inquiry box that you can ask questions. Like I can actually say, what do business owners think about this? And it will give you data based, sort it that way. So I'm actually going to see if I can provide a link that you would be able to use to ask the same questions. I'm not sure if it has that sharing ability, but I'm going to look into that. But in any case, I can, do that cross tabulation type data. I think a lot easier than the old days before AI. So, in the past, we have to download all the Excel and go from there. But this is a lot more functional with the new online platform.
Well, that would partially answer your question about what do businesses think
Sure.
about
Yeah,
DDA,
Exactly.
at least those business owners that responded.
correct.
So
That's what I'm
that's a
saying.
start.
And I'd like to kind of see there's responses broken out for all the questions and kind of do the comparisons.
Some priorities. Are their priorities the same sequence or different?
But if that can be done, I know that's one of the things I was worried about, David, is if you had to go through all 300 of them and try to like break it out and summarize them, I'm like, you hate putting that much work on somebody, but hey, if AI is going to try to take care of it, then I would suggest that if as you're going through and looking at the survey results, if you see something in there, you can shoot it over to Grayson and he can forward it to Dave and he can actually kind of, put it together between now and next meeting. Anything else that anyone wants to cover on that before we move on to our favorite topic of signs? All right, David, nice job on this. We appreciate it. And I definitely look forward to going through the answers and seeing, especially what people wrote in. I can see that there's a lot of, obviously, if you got 134 pages, there must be a lot of those type of comments that are in there, which is good. And for those who had the time, I think most of us did read the city of Douglas, the city of the village of Douglas, his plan. They had at the back of theirs was like 5 or 6 pages of all the comments that they got from their surveys and from their public meetings. And so it's, I thought that was just kind of an interesting way to kind of summarize, let people just kind of read through all the responses. And that might be something we want to consider also. I guess the last thing on this, and I don't know if it's Grayson or David, knowing a big part of the master plan, when you kind of kick off, is all the demographic stuff. Is that something that you're going to be pulling together with your firm, or are we looking to get that from an outside source?
Yeah, and that's something that Grayson and Ryan and I will discuss, just how we're going to structure the scope of services, the budget, and is this something that we're just doing on an hourly basis, or are we putting together a specific number and budget? But I have, so those conversations are in the works. I did speak to Andy Moore from Williams and Works, who some of you may know, and they're also willing to assist with certain aspects of the plan, so that they're certainly willing to lend a hand. So we'll work out all those specifics and come up with a proposal for the Planning Commission and city staff.
Okay. So at the next meeting, do you think we'd want to start kind of talking about some like the different chapters that we may be incorporating? Would that actually be more of December? Thinking like, okay, you've got demographics, then you've got to look at all the assets of the city and how you're going to break down the discussion on the assets.
Yeah, I think we'll get into that. I think that would be more of a December conversation. And I think November would be more the proposal, the scope, timeframes, milestones, and
Perfect.
just coming to agreement on what we want to do into the extent of work on certain sections, and do we want the plan to incorporate drawings, or just, are we doing traditional mapping? Are we getting some designer involved? What resources do we want to pull into it? And so I think it's more scoping, budget, and what do you really want us to focus on in this effort?
Which makes sense. That's, to go that route, because I know initially we kind of talked about getting the survey, the open houses, and getting the responses, and we're right on track with that. And so now it's getting ready to talk about what is that next step. So by the end of November's meeting, we'd like to have kind of that laid out, and then we move forward with each section and December forward. That's perfect. Yep. Great. All right, if there's nothing else on that item, then we'll close out item A and move on to old business sign ordinance. In our kits, starting on page 35, we have a memorandum that came to us, from Trent and his team over at Fahey, as well as a draft of potential ordinance that's been redlined for us. And also there was a number of places in here that Trent will probably walk us through, where we have kind of like some blanks, for us to kind of discuss as to what we want to put in there. I don't know if everybody had an opportunity to kind of look through and give your thoughts, but at this time, I will turn it over to Trent and see if you kind of want to lead this and walk us through.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you guys know, we talked about this quite a while ago, back in June. I wasn't actually at that meeting, but Jake was there, and then we got some comments from the commission, and then led to some revisions, and we've kind of been working in the background on it since then, as the commission has a very busy docket, and we finally brought it back. So my main sort of point in providing this memo was to provide sort of a baseline for the discussion, because I think this ordinance can be very overwhelming just on its own. There's a lot of nuance to it, and so my hope is that the memo will kind of serve as a baseline for the discussion as we kind of move through it tonight. And pursuant to that, I tried to go through and chop up the different sections, and as well as the relevant definitions. And so if you just page through the memo really quickly, you'll see the sections align with the different sections in the ordinance. But I think it's a little bit easier, for example, in part 1, to see signs allowed in all zoning districts, and then the relevant definitions are laid out, as well as the relevant provisions. And so I thought we can kind of go step by step and get a little bit more granular without having to sort of be overwhelmed by the overall scope of the ordinance. And so just to recap, this has been revised from the draft that we brought before you back in June. However, as I'm sure you're aware, just by glancing on it, there's many things that can still be fleshed out. We've intentionally left blanks in certain places. And then to the chair's point, the other numbers that we did fill in, None of those are set in stone. A lot of them, in fact, most of this ordinance is designed to mirror the current sign regulations that the city has. And as I explained in my memo, that's where a lot of the complexity comes from, is trying to, for, sort of be a one-to-one copy in a way of that. And so, for example, if you look at the provisions for signs that are allowed in non-residential districts, those are almost identical to the provisions that are in the current sign ordinance. And so just to say that is like, this is not like a typical sign ordinance that my office would usually put in place, because it's meant to mirror the current regulations. And so with that being said, I'm not married to anything in this draft. If the commission wants to take it a different direction or simplify certain provisions, or even get more nuanced on other provisions, that's certainly something we can consider. So turning to the first section, I wanted to sort of include some general discussion questions that I think we can touch on briefly, just because it's.
Trent, can I stop you? Trent, I'm sorry,
Absolutely.
can I stop you right there?
Yeah.
You said this is, if I heard what you just said, you said this sign ordinance is not the typical one that your office generates or works on, and I didn't understand why.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. That's probably overstating. But what I'm trying to say is that, like, this is not a template that we work from. Every ordinance that I put in doesn't look like this. And so what I'm saying is, like, if we want to tweak things or tweak certain definitions or provisions, that's absolutely something we can do. It's not, the reason the draft looks the way that it does is an attempt to mirror the current sign regulation.
Okay. All right.
I was talking to Grayson on the phone earlier today, and I mentioned that some of our more rural clients, have much shorter, simpler sign ordinances. And so all that is to say is, like, this is open to change. It's not a hardline recommendation at all. Even the numbers we put in are numbers that the commission could certainly go a different direction on. A good example of that is the flag provisions. So if you flip to page 3 of my memo, which is on page 37 of your packet, you can see we've included some blanks for the flags there, but we've also filled in some of those numbers. Number 1A there says, under no circumstances shall the total number of flags exceed 3 flags. That's just a number that, with discussions with David and my office and with Grayson, we've decided was maybe a good placeholder number. There's no reason we couldn't change that number. And so I'm not trying to say that there's anything different about this draft that would be bad. It's meant to mirror the city's regulations, and we can depart from those if we choose to.
Okay.
So and then to that point, please stop me at any point throughout this. I may talk more than I normally do, just trying to present this in a way that sort of makes sense, but happy to stop and have a little sidebar whenever you guys see something that catches your eye. So the general discussion questions there, since it's been since June that we talked about this, I thought it would be useful to kind of take a step back and talk about maybe some certain sign situations that you guys have observed in the city that are problematic, or ones that maybe are good and that we want to encourage them, and what signs should be allowed and why. And I think that's a good exercise, because I think once we get a draft together, it's easy to just keep chugging along with that draft, when sometimes I think it's beneficial to take a step back and say, is this actually a problem? Is there a reason that we want to get to this level of detail or to regulate this? And so I thought we could kind of kick it off by just having some general discussion of those points there. What signs are problematic and why? Why are those, or where are those signs problematic, and so on. So I'll turn it over for some just brief discussion on that.
I think one of the things that I remember from our discussions earlier in the year, we were talking about, we really don't run across a lot of issues. I wasn't aware of signs and the problems with it. It was primarily, we had to update our ordinance so that we were in line with, what was that legal case, where we couldn't have the distinction between different types of signs. So has anyone seen problem signs?
Like, I'm not looking to increase or make things more strict than they are under our current ordinance. So to your point, Steve, like in terms of the number of signs or how long they got to stay up and creating a whole enforcement regime, that's not what I'm looking to do. So I think our current ordinance does not allow temporary yard signs that are advertising for off premises. I think we should allow them in some cases, but to me, that's the category that you could have some structures, work being done on a house, But any other sign, and I personally don't care if it's in front of a non-residential use or whatever, like let let the businesses have their opinions on things. I think that's okay.
I have two general comments. One, I don't care how many yard signs are in somebody's yard. And two, it troubles me that item after item after item has the phrase, these signs require a permit from the zoning administrator, including if you have the provision about political signs, at election time, and somebody wants to put out 3 and our ordinance says 2, and they've got to go to a zoning, they may not even know that they have to go to Grayson to get a permit. And then ancillary to that is, does getting a permit to put a temporary yard sign out require a fee, which I would think it probably would? And is that constitutional if it's a political sign to require somebody to pay a fee? And the last part of that to me is, I think this just happened in Douglas. I don't want our zoning administrators' time to be taken up being sign police. I don't think it's good for our community, and I don't think it's a good use of our city resources. So I'm kind of going along with Craig, less is more. And those are a couple of the general thoughts I have. But again, time and time again, it was like, okay, you put any kind of sign anywhere, you've got to go to Grayson and get a permit. And I don't think people know that or would know that. So.
Yeah.
So if I could just jump in for a second, because I think that was some of the feedback that came in from the last meeting. So signs that are allowed in all districts, I'm looking at the first part of my memo there, starting on page 36 of your packet. For those signs, they would be allowed anywhere in the city without a permit. And those would include temporary yard signs. And then, so temporary yard signs is on the next page there. If you flip to page 37, we've included the definitions, and then the following page has the regulations on page 38. So what we've done there is drawn distinctions based on the different uses of the parcel. And the reason we did that is because the feedback we heard last time from the planning commission, at least what we thought we understood, was that there was not a huge desire to allow off-premises temporary yard signs for non-residential uses. And so we've tweaked that a little bit, and so that's why there's a distinction there. And so if you look at 2B, that would be for residential uses and non-residential uses, and it applies only to on-premise yard signs. So this could, theoretically be like your garage sale sign or your for sale sign or something along those lines. For C, then it would be just for residential uses, and this is your off-premise temporary yard signs. So these would be your political signs or homecoming signs or things of that nature. And then D then is the provision that we implemented to try and capture what was just talked about there, was the sort of increased signage, or allowing for both residential and non-residential uses to have a certain number of off-premises temporary yard signs when there's on-site services added. And so we added a definition of on-site services, and that's why I thought this memo would kind of be a nice way to provide it, because it's just right up above it there. You can see the definitions that would apply. And so to an extent, we did simplify the draft to not require permits for those types of signs. But totally hear the point, and we can make it, less restrictive too, if that's the commission's desire.
Yeah, your initial question is, what do we have? What's the problem? Or I don't think we have any sign problems. So less is more. I think that's been said by the other 2 comments already.
Because the one thing that I do think, we don't have the issues, but as we're looking at it and we're putting it together, we'd want to try to foresee, again, when it comes to the size things, like, okay, we don't care how many yard signs they have, but we don't want to have a neighbor where they've got a 10 by 12, a sign up or something. So having limits on it, same way like with flags, you don't want to have like a massive flag, flying. Or like when you get to the neon, it should be up to a business owner, but I don't want to see a business owner have their entire window, with neon shining out. So I think it's not really the problems. It's just trying to foresee if somebody wanted to do it down the road, that you've given them a parameter as to what the size and the limit would be. But currently it's not an issue, but it's kind of thinking about where, if it did become an issue, what would be the maximum we'd want to see? And I think it's more sizes as opposed to numbers.
I agree with that. I don't want to get into too many rules and regulations for
Yeah.
somebody to have to, Grayson have to take his tape measure down to see things.
Right.
Well, that's why when I was trying to when I was going through, almost every one of my number things were consistent between each of the different types, because I don't want it to be like, well, that's a temporary sign, so you can go up to 9 square feet on that. Well, that one go 12 square feet. Well, that one's 6.
I think the framework's important.
Yeah.
And this is a very good framework from what I can tell. Because, it's the same old thing, right? We don't have a problem now. I don't see it, and I certainly don't want to restrict yard signs as an example. Doesn't mean that we won't down the road, right? Somebody could come in and cover their entire yard, right? Because they can't have a large sign, they put out 200 small ones, right? And it may get to a point where we want to tweak it a little bit, but right now, don't want to fix a problem that we don't have. But the framework and how this is kind of structured, I think gives us enough granularity where we can fine tune it if we need to. At least that's my impression.
And I know we can't talk about specific like political signs, but I do think having that, time limit, whether it be like 45 days or 60 days, can't say so many days after an election, because then you're talking about political signs. So it's got to be generic. But I think for the most part, again, I haven't seen that in prior election periods. Most people pretty much get the signs out of their yards pretty timely. But again, it's just kind of setting a parameter in case somebody doesn't, that gives us the ability to kind of go and ask them to do it.
But we don't have that ability. Do we?
Yeah, right now, I don't think we do. Like in here, though, we like temporary yard signs, you have like the section on 38 where you could say 60 days or 45 days, something like that.
But then somebody might have a yard sign up that they want to leave up permanently in.
Right.
Yeah.
Because somebody has got a vacation rental and they've got their sign out front that's going to stay there all year, of who to call if you're interested in, renting this property.
Yeah.
And that's where you get into the difficulty on, but I guess,
Or a political point of view,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that.
because when I was going through it, I saw like the temporary yard sign, I was like, well, 60 days seems reasonable. But then is a yard sign that's kind of on those little like metal posts where you see that has the name of the property manager, to contact you if you're interested in renting that home. Is that a temporary sign or is that a business sign? Right now it's residential, so it's, it doesn't, so it has to fall within our residential group. So that one, I mean, I've got some, again, they don't bother me, but there's some in our neighborhood that those signs stay there 365 days a year, right? I wouldn't mind seeing them go either, but but they don't really bother me, it's just.
One suggestion that might help a situation like that, and I'm hesitant to add more nuance, but it may work, is if we added a durational limit for off-premise signs, but did not have a durational limit for on-premise signs. So if you were advertising like a short-term rental on your property and the sign like you just described, Chairman Mans, was like the property manager, for example, I think that's fairly categorized as an on-premise sign. It's speaking to the activities that are being conducted on that parcel. And so I think in that situation, we could distinguish there. And then the other side of that coin is I think that there's less of a durational issue with on-premise signs as opposed to off-premise signs. Like if someone had a political sign, for example, or something like that they kept up year round, I think that could potentially be more problematic than someone leaving up something that relates to the actual property, if that makes sense.
Well, let's throw the third nuance in. A sign expressing the belief of the property owner. I believe peace should prevail every day of the year. Is that political or is that a premise sign?
Yeah, really good question. I think it would probably be considered off premise just because there's nothing on it that would be related to activities conducted on the property. Like itself, you could argue that it was the views of the homeowner, but I don't think that would make it on premise. And the whole on premise, off premise thing, typically, like it grows out of the case law from this case called City of Austin that deals with advertising. And so it's typically thought of in that context, which I think is probably obvious. Like, if you have a salon or something, that would be on premise. So it's a little bit unusual when it's applied to political signs or to opinion signs like that, but just given the definitions, I think it would probably be considered off premise.
But we could, if we want to, just limit the restrictions on off-premises signs to commercial speech, right? That's still subject to intermediate scrutiny.
You can, yeah, you can. So there, and if you look at the mural provisions in here, there we kind of have a little bit of that because it's limiting to just strictly commercial speech. The issue you get into there is if you're regulating signs that are like on residential properties under the guise of it being regulating commercial speech, I think you could run into a bit of an issue. But you're correct that the case law is intermediate scrutiny for commercial speech.
And not to bust your chops, but both on section 3 and section 4, signs allowed in resident, and maybe I just don't understand it. It seems a conflict. You said that temporary signs do not require permit, and yet section 3, signs allowed in residential districts, the last sentence of the paragraph is these signs require a permit from the zoning administrator. Same thing with number 4, signs allowed in non-residential zoning districts, these signs would require a permit. I'm confused as to what those apply to if they don't apply to all signs in residential or non-residential districts.
Good question. So, and that's why I thought the memo would be helpful because it provides a basis for these types of answers. So for number 3 there, it's signs allowed in all in residential zoning districts. But if you look at the type of signs there, it's for only non-residential uses within those districts. And so the entire idea of this section under 3 is to apply to sort of probably a somewhat unusual situation, but it does come up and there is a unique sign issue, is like a commercial use in a residential neighborhood, like a church, for example, or a bed and breakfast, or if you pay attention to the definitions, we define the common areas of an apartment complex as a non-residential use. And the reason is because those types of uses, a house of worship or a bed and breakfast, have a justifiable need for like a freestanding sign, for example, or an attached sign or a banner, which is the 3 types of signs that are allowed under section 3 there. And so for a temporary yard sign allowed in all districts, it would not require a permit. For a freestanding sign in a residential district for a bed and breakfast, it would require a permit. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so if somebody is doing a home business and advertising, cutting hair, that's also something like that.
Correct. Yep. That would be
Okay.
a commercial
Got it.
use. Yep. Yep. And the same thing applies to 4 then. And
Yeah.
if you think about it like a funnel kind of, the signs that are allowed in all districts under 2, or I'm sorry, under 1, is the broadest category. And then as you move down, you get narrower and narrower into the types of signs and the types of uses. And some of those more narrow ones require permits. Basically, if it's a permanent sign, it's going to require a permit. Flags, temporary signs, and certain specific types of like an attached sign, for example, would not.
And you drive down Butler, you drive down our main street. I think you probably drive down any main street in any city. There are signs that protrude from the building that I would either call a pennant or a feather flag sign that says open. Are those prohibited, or is that somehow is that a flag under your definition?
No, those are prohibited under section 2 there, which is probably what you were looking at. Those are carryovers from the current city regulations.
So when our businesses have an open banner outside of their business, that's currently prohibited?
No, there's banners and then there's feather flag signs or wind feather signs. I think there's a slight difference there. And I think the idea there with the city's current regulations and what's been imported into this is that the feather flags are like the ones that are on a pole that kind of like flail in the wind. And I think they're potentially distracting to motorists, whereas a banner is typically secured. It's not meant to flail in the wind, for example. So I think there is a slight distinction there, but I totally appreciate that it's nuanced. It's not super clear.
Okay. Okay, just trying to figure out what's going on. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're really good questions, and that was what I was hoping the memo would provide as kind of a sounding board to talk about some of these things, because when you look at the full draft, I don't think it's super clear what's happening. So I tried to break it down and give the little paragraph heading to sort of explain where it's at.
One last point, and then I'll shut up. Sandwich boards, do the sandwich boards need to be contiguous or adjacent to the properties that they're advertising? We have a business in town that puts a sandwich board about a block away from where their business is because the business is down a side street. Are you anticipating the sandwich boards need to be contiguous or adjacent, say in the public right away, right in front of the business, or it doesn't matter to you?
So the sandwich board was imported from the current sign regulations. I don't know that it has any clarification as to the distance it can be from the building. Signs that are located within the right of way would be subject to different restrictions. But I think if that's potentially an issue, I think that's a good point. It's something we could include, is that it's got to be within a certain distance of the actual building or the entrance or something like that, within.
I don't think that business would be happy with me, but, okay.
Well, we don't have, I mean, it's up to, we don't have to clarify it either, but technically a sign within the right of way without permissions to do it would be a problem anyway, so.
Okay.
So I think those are all good discussions, and feel free to jump in at any point if there's more questions. As I sort of explained now, the memo is meant to sort of be a guide. I think we've touched pretty well on the signs that are allowed within all districts. And obviously there's some blanks that we could fill in there, but I think we've sort of covered those. Prohibited signs, section 2 now. They'd be prohibited anywhere within the city, except for a few specific examples. And the one that I flagged at the outset is the non-residential use for off-premise temporary yard signs could be allowed when they have on-site services. And so this would really just be a business typically would not, under this current draft at least, would not be allowed to have off-premise temporary yard signs. But if they had on-site services being offered, like contractors, pest control, landscaping, as the commission's kind of mentioned and we've talked about quite a bit at this point, that's a built-in exception that would allow them to have a certain number of off-premise temporary yard signs. So that's kind of like one of the main nuances to this prohibited signs section. Obviously, a lot of them have aligned with the current regulations, billboards, the pennant feather flags, that type of stuff is imported from the current regulations. And so if to the extent that there's any questions on the prohibited signs, or if we think that those should be tweaked, let me know. But I think that section is probably one of the few that sort of is more self-explanatory. Moving on to section 3, signs allowed in all residential zoning districts. This would really only just be the R1, R2, and R4 districts, so it's pretty limited subset. And this is what I just mentioned with Commissioner Lachey is this is meant to target bed and breakfast, houses of worship, apartment complex, like common areas of apartment complexes, potentially other types of home occupation uses would apply here. And it's really a very limited subset of signs because it's meant to target that very specific situation where you have a non-residential use in a residential district. Number 3 here is sort of a flip side of the coin to number 4, which is non-residential zoning districts, all non-residential zoning districts. And if you look, what I mean by that is that the signs under 3 mirror the provisions from 4, but they're just smaller. So for example, a non-residential use in a residential district can have one freestanding sign subject to the following requirements. The area of that freestanding sign is capped at 50% of what would be allowed under 4. Now that sounds super complicated because it is honestly complicated, but it's imported directly from the current city regs. And so I thought that made sense to sort of keep that in line. But of course, we can deviate from that if we think it's too cumbersome or if we don't think that's the way we want to deal with it. But I just wanted to explain that because I think reading those provisions on their own doesn't make much sense. But understanding that it's the size, the height, and those types of things are in relation to what's allowed in under section 4 there for non-residential zoning districts. Non-residential zoning districts under 4 is every other district in the city except for R1, R2, and R4. And this section is the one that most aligns with the current city regulations. Most of these provisions, if not all of them, are copy and pasted right out of the current sign regulations. So we can obviously adjust them, and there's no better time really to adjust them if we feel that there's a need for that. But that's, you know, to the commission seems like they want to kind of align with what's currently been in place and not be more restrictive. And so that was the intent, was to import those. These signs would require a permit, as well as the signs under 3 would require a permit, as I think we've addressed. So if there's any questions about those, I'm happy to take those, but that's, like I said, mostly aligns with what's currently in place. Moving to 5 is neon signs. This is something I believe we added in for this draft, or at least we tweaked for this draft. They would only be allowed in non-residential zoning districts, which I think makes sense. Although it's not required. If there's a need for neon signs in residential areas, we could adjust that. And the definitions here are pretty bare bones. We've kept it pretty simple, and they have you know, mostly just blanks in them. And so that's a good item for discussion if the planning commission wants to try and fill in some of those blanks. Murals at number 6, I briefly mentioned this. You know, there's a good question about commercial speech there. We've used this distinction for murals in the past, sort of drawing a distinction based on advertising or commercial. And the idea is that, you know, you don't want to have a giant painting in the city that is advertising a business or something like that. But there's also some, you know, I think real concerns for that. If that's something that can be allowed, they may become very popular and they pop up everywhere. They can be distracting to motorists and that sort of thing. And so, because this is targeting just commercial speech, as I sort of briefly explained in the memo, it's my opinion that this would be a permissible, if, at least not a very, it's a desirable provision, I think, to have. If we're going to allow murals, I think we should have some limitations on what type of murals could be allowed. So again, that section's pretty bare bones. We can flesh it out a little more if need be, but it's kind of meant as just a discussion item placeholder. And then finally, the last section I provided is what Chairman Mans was kind of talking about, and we provided a legal opinion to the city. I don't think it's been distributed to the planning commission members, but if you are interested and would like to read it, I'm sure you could ask Grayson or Ryan to get a copy of it. It relates to the question that was asked previously about event-based signage provisions, like elections, allowing an increased number of signage around elections. The position we have there is that this is likely to be found impliedly content-based, and so there's courts don't look too favorably at those types of provisions. And again, we provided a legal opinion, but I think that what we did find as a potential option here is additional signage permit, which is, I like to think of it as like a speaker's choice provision, and really it allows a window of time pursuant to a permit that you could have an increased number of signage. And that window could be wherever you choose it to be. It could be, you know, in the summertime when there's a lot of tourists around, or it could be during election season. It could literally be any time. And the permit there would set forth the permissible amount of time that they could have it, and it'd be like a once per year sort of window allowing increased signage. I just wanted to bring this up as an option for the city to consider. I know, like I said, we've had some discussions about those event-based signs, and I think this is a good alternative to that. It would be a little bit of an administrative burden, but to the extent that I don't think it would be super common to have people seeking these permits, and I don't think it would be too difficult to police it because we would just have the expiration be in the permit itself. So that's just something to consider if there's an interest in that type of provision. So that's kind of a run through of my memo there, and I realize it's a lot of information, but happy to answer any questions. And at the very least, I provided the highlighted version of the blanks in the draft. For purposes of this draft, I don't think the red lines are super helpful. The red lines show what's been changed from the last draft to this one, but it's just not very easy to read. And red lines generally, I don't think, are the best way of making sense of things. So the clean draft, which starts on page 62, I highlighted all the blanks. And so at the very least, I think we could pick through those and discuss some of those if there's not any more discussion about like the general structure and some of the specific provisions in my memo.
Can we first give a nice little round of applause to Trent for that nice memo? I thought it was very, very good on very, very dense stuff. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Nice way of laying it out.
Do we not need the section on additional options, window of increased signage, if we remove limits on number of signs and how long they can be in a yard? Doesn't that remove that need?
It would if we completely removed the limits on the number of signs. But if you were going to do that, I would assume you would probably have like a total square footage requirement to cap like the total number of signage or total amount of signage you can have in your yard. And in that situation, you could apply it the same way, where it would be additional square footage would be allowed if you had the permit. Because in the alternative, like if you didn't have a limit on the number of signs that you could have, or the duration, and you didn't have a square footage limit, you would not have any limits on those types of signs, as far as like a total number. So.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Are we? I'm trying to think if there's anything out there. Are we worried about the broadness of the abandoned sign definition? I don't know if any stores have like old retro signs out that could then be prohibited from this. And I don't know if that's an unintended consequence or something. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but would you think that would capture it if there was like a store with an old retro sign? Could that fall under the abandoned sign and thus be prohibited, Trent?
It's a good question. We did expand the definition of abandoned sign quite a bit. I don't think, based on my initial impression, that a retro sign would fall into it unless the retro sign had like fallen into disrepair or no longer related to what was being done on the property, that kind of thing. So for like example, if the retro sign was advertising a business that no longer was on the parcel, like that would be a situation where it could apply. But just because it's retro and old in general is not going to make it fall under those sections.
Yeah, I guess I'm more of just thinking maybe that there's a building that used to be a certain business and then the new one has that old sign on there kind of as a tribute, like how you'll see in some other place. That's just what I worry about capturing. I know that this is a conjunctive list, but there's nothing that would really stop us from that. Like, I don't know if there was an ode at, Pumpernickel's to an old business there. But I don't know if that's a thing, but I also want to be able to preserve that too in order to preserve the town's history. And I don't know if there's a way we can modify.
Yeah, I think we could try and come up with something to modify that. And it maybe even could be something about allowing some discretion for the zoning administrator to make that determination. But I'd have to think about that a little bit more. It's a really good point. So I'll put some thought into that.
Okay, thank you.
And Trent, if we were, which I don't think we're leaning towards having this like strict limit, but like what would a alarm company sign? Because if somebody has an alarm system in their house, usually by your front door or something, you have a sign that's got the name of the alarm company. That stays there 365. So now is that considered a temporary sign or is that part of the overall home?
Good question. So I think it would be considered an attached sign if it was, what I'm thinking of here is like ADT is one that's common, and you'll see like a sticker in the window that says ADT protected or something like that. I think that would likely be classified as an attached sign, which you could have 4 of.
Yeah, but there's many times you'll have one that's just like on a pole, like a stick, and you stick in the ground at the your driveway or someplace by your front door.
Yeah.
I would, that to me, that's not wouldn't count towards if we had a limit on the number of signs. Because you wouldn't want it to anyway, as far as I'm concerned, because that's kind of, somebody is just they're not advertising for ADT, they're just letting everyone know that their home is monitored by ADT.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in that example, a pole sign like that would probably be considered an on-premise temporary yard sign. And so it would currently under this draft fall under those limits. So that's something we can certainly tweak. And if, you know, Commissioner Lachey mentioned the no limit on the number of signs, and maybe that's the solution is to remove the limit on the number of signs, but still have some square footage requirement. So you could say like, you know, temporary yard signs, you can have any number of them so long as it doesn't exceed like 24 square feet or something like that in area, sign area. I understand that that's a situation where Grayson might have to get his measuring stick out as to tell if there's compliance or not. But you would not necessarily be penalizing them for having the ADT sign in that, or the protection sign in that situation, because it would count towards their square footage, but a pretty negligible amount, right? Like if it's a 2 square foot sign,
Usually small.
yeah, it wouldn't hurt them too much. Whereas if you left, like the current draft has a cap on the number of on-premise signs you can have, which I think is 2 for now, it would count as one of those 2, which I understand the point, and it's probably not what we're trying to do. So that's certainly something to consider, especially if the planning commission doesn't necessarily want to limit the number of signs. I think we could explore using area requirements instead. It'd be more permissible at least.
The existing definition of temporary yard sign includes any sign that is not constructed or intended for long-term use. I would say an
That's a
ADT
long-term.
sign is intended for long-term use. So,
That's what
and constructed, usually they're constructed, they're usually metal.
Right, it's a metal sign.
But then it would be a freestanding sign, right? And there's limits, or even, I'm not even sure residential properties can have a freestanding sign under the current draft, so.
They would not be allowed to have a freestanding sign under the current draft. So that's a good point, and something we should probably parse out a little bit. Because I think if it's permanent, you probably are getting into that freestanding sign area. So that's a good point, something we'll consider.
And the other type of sign that I guess it's a question, is it a sign or not? But if somebody has like their address on a stake at the beginning of their driveway,
That too. I
is
thought,
that a
yeah.
sign? Or is that just their address placard? You know, so these are these are the type of things that I'll drive through and you'll see like somebody's got a picture of their house, or they've got a metal that's been etched out with their address and it's stuck at the beginning of their driveway, or it's in their flower garden. You know, it's an address, but is it technically a sign? I guess it is. It's temporary. Usually it's on stakes stuck in the ground. It's not permanent.
Yeah, I think that would be considered a sign there. And maybe like what the solution would be is to allow some sort of freestanding sign in the residential residential areas, because currently that's not allowed, or at least for residential uses in the residential areas. And that would help to address maybe some of these more like semi-permanent signs that are meant to
Because when you're talking about what's allowed, can it just be like, you are allowed to have a sign with your address? You're allowed to have a temporary sign that's kind of like permanent for security, systems. You know, you could kind of name 2 or 3 that's most likely going to be a type of sign that you would keep
It
year
doesn't
round.
count against our total, it doesn't.
Right.
count.
Yeah, so what I have in the current draft that I thought was capturing some of that stuff is the number, so under number 1 in my memo, 3, I'm sorry, number 1-3 allows 4 attached signs for any property, non-residential or residential. And my thought there was, often when you're driving around, you'll see people have like their house number engraved into like above their garage or something like that. Or you see those security signs in the window or a sticker in the window. And my thought there was like, we don't really want to prohibit those. And so we allowed a pretty generous allotment of 4 of them as long as they're relatively small. But it sounds like the city has somewhat of a need for, or at least, you know, there's some other circumstances where we might want to allow these. And the 2 examples I think you gave are good, the security sign or the other sort of pole sign and address sign in the yard. And I think we can probably come up with something there that would allow those, but not count towards a temporary yard sign type of situation.
Perfect. Okay. That was my other comments.
I have one crazy one, not necessarily a comment, but more of a question. I think about a lot of the people that, and there's probably an obvious answer, you guys are gonna correct me, but a lot of the people that have the neighborhood libraries with the books. What do we consider that? Is that it? I don't think it's a sign, but I can't think of what else it would be, especially if it has like writing on it or a descriptor. How would we treat it?
Right now, it gets regulated as a structure.
As a structure. Okay, perfect. That's fine. Okay, sweet. Thank you.
Say what? The signs that say slow children playing that people pop up in their front yards.
Or like kids live here.
Right.
Dogs, yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
Yeah. Well.
Which is why I think.
Pick and
having-
choose, I guess.
Those are
I think
permanent
having a limit
signs.
number, having a number limit is gonna be an issue.
Kind of covers.
But if you do a
But now you're
square
getting to a
footage,
much larger sign though, you know, so it's visible to motorists and you're starting to eat into that square footage, so we just have to be cognizant.
I guess my view is we don't currently have number or square footage limits, and I'm not sure where we perceive the need for that is right now. So no one's asking for it.
because is this something to that point? If we didn't have square footage or a limit, you know, a number limit or a square footage limit, if we started to see an issue down the road, we'd be able to discuss and add it in at some future date, right?
You could, yeah, especially in the context of a temporary sign, because you'd have a lot less of an issue with nonconformities.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, that's something you can tweak later on, definitely. But I guess I'm not really. The current sign regulations do have quite a bit of limits based on square footage, I believe.
Not for the temporary yard signs, though.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, if we're talking about specific, so like I'm looking at 150.30. Like a construction sign has a 32 square foot area requirement. Rental signs, 4 feet in size. So there are, but they're distinguished. A garage sale sign is a 2 square feet. Election sign, 4 square feet in size. And so what we've had to combine all of those into one category. And so we imported the square footage requirements and tried to make it kind of align. But like I said, I've been saying, like we don't have to keep that if we want to move away from it.
I am more amenable to a square footage than a concrete number or
Sure.
a time limit. I mean, it seems like you drive in rural areas and see monster signs, especially political. And I don't think we would want that here in town, although I don't want to be the person to say yes or no to that. I don't think I have that authority. But, I'd be more agreeable to some kind of square footage than a number of signs or how long the signs can be there. That's just me.
I would agree to
I agree, and that's another thing if somebody's gotta go out and count.
Right.
Yeah.
And oops, it's been 31 days.
When somebody goes
32
over,
days.
yeah, somebody goes over the 42 square feet, it's gonna be sort of obvious. It's gonna be pretty apparent.
So if I could just ask a clarifying question, are you guys referring to like square footage of each sign would be capped or like a total square footage? And I just have one sort of story about this that I had a code enforcement case one time around election time that somebody like put like 30 political signs in their yard and they were all very small, right? They were in the typical size of a political sign. But if we're talking about like a square footage limit per sign, like each sign should not exceed 10 square feet. You could technically have 30 small signs in your yard. So what I've kind of been referring to as a square footage limit is a total square footage limit, which would be like, you can't exceed 24 square feet in total. And so if you have one larger sign that's like, 18 square feet, then you can only have 6 more square footage of signage, if that makes sense. I would, at least right now off the top of my head, I would recommend the total square footage limitation of some kind. Just so you have some checks over that. It can be tweaked over time, obviously, to make it more or less, but.
I was thinking total, and
Total.
CJ said,
Yeah.
like I said, I was thinking total square footage. So that Grayson can go out and measure each of the little signs and take a calculator and add them up and slap the wrist of the person who lives there. But,
That's what we did, yeah, so.
Well, Trent, I don't think there's any harm in having a definition for each individual sign can only be a certain maximum size. And then you're allowed a certain total square footage. Because I can't say you could have 48 square feet total.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, somebody wants to have a 12x4 sign, there's, and they only have one sign. So I think we'd still be able to say, hey, it can't be more than 6 square feet, for a temporary sign, and you can have up to, 30 feet of it, or 36 feet of it, or whatever it is. But they can't have just one sign that gets them to the maximum.
Yeah,
That
I think that's a good point. And I think that's what we would so I think what I'm hearing, and there's a pretty good consensus, is we should kind of go through and scrub the total number of signs out of this, and instead sort of come up with a provision where you would have a sign specific square footage and then a total square footage requirement, and that's where we would get the limits from. But that's something we can definitely do. I think it's a good idea. I do.
And I would think if we're talking about most of the signs that you see when a business is doing construction, or if it's even like a political sign, or they're putting something out for the high school, aren't those usually, what are they, like 2 feet by 2 feet? 18 inches by 2 feet for the most part. Trying to think, even the signs are out right now.
Yeah.
They're kind of like 2 feet by 18. Maybe it's 2 feet by 2, that's 4. So like if we were just given a ballpark, is, 30 square feet total too much? I mean, that would give somebody the ability to have like 5 2x3 signs. I mean, because we're gonna have to somehow come up with a number as to what we think is reasonable for a total square footage.
We were talking about the construction signs, it's 32, I saw, 32, that's 8x4, it's a sheet of plywood, and that's how it got to that possibly. So I thought that was a good overall number.
The 32?
Yeah, the 32, and then
I
with
use-
individual signs, I agree, I don't know what they are, if they're 18x2, or so if you said 4 feet square.
Yeah, because I think we were a
5 feet
lot of
square
the,
to cover.
a lot of the ones that we saw, they were like a total, nothing could exceed 6 square feet.
Yeah.
So if it's a 2x3, it would be kind of the
Yeah.
biggest anybody could ever have. And we can make it 4, which is a 2x2, but I think there are sometimes you'll see one, it's like 3, about
Okay,
3
that's
feet
it, then
temporary.
let's not try to get into
Right. That's
nitpicking too much,
exactly.
yeah,
And that's why, but then if you had something like a 32
total.
total, then no one can really have more than
6, 4.
4 or 5 of those type of signs, or they could have up to, I guess, 6 of, or not 6, but 8 if they were just 2x2s.
Right.
But who cares? I mean, like Mark had said earlier, I don't think anybody has an issue if they're gonna have
Right, and
8 signs going across their yard if they want to, but
plus a ring camera and whatever else.
I mean, the commissioner who's not here has,
I don't know how many signs Bobby Gaunt has in her yard. She has numerous and she's proud of them and happy with them. And I walk past there almost every day and I don't care.
exactly.
It's no different to me than somebody has, a cherub with water coming out of its mouth. I mean, it's their private property. And so if we do a gross amount that is too small, and it seems like we're going back to, okay, the signs can only be so large and there's only so
Yeah.
gross amount, that means she only gets 3 signs or 4 signs. A person, I won't say she, gets only 3 signs or 4 signs. And the double whammy is why that person should be limited, and 2, do we want our city zoning administrator going out there and spending his time on that? So.
No, I don't think it would Grace's time, but like if you had a total limit of 24 or 30 or 32, I wouldn't say it's Grayson's going to be going out and measuring it. It would be more or less if somebody complained and somebody said, oh, this person has way too many signs or they bother me, then it would be up to him to go out and follow up on that complaint, but he's not going to be walking around neighborhoods and measuring signs. I don't think he.
Well, somebody was doing that in Douglas.
I know. But I think that they've also had complaints, from what I understand.
So Mark, I hear your position and I'm against having the limits, but I also, we talk about foreseeing future problems. And that's why picking that gross amount.
Right.
The big amount. And
Yeah,
it's
I don't
hard
want a
to-
monster sign in somebody's yard
Right.
for any number of reasons. It impairs sight lines and, you know,
Just, it could not be attractive.
right, absolutely.
It's
Yeah,
a,
it's part of.
so it's something that you need to have a maximum size of any temporary sign, and then you need a maximum total square footage of signage.
But I don't want us to be, and I don't think we should be, the aesthetics police or the aesthetics determinant. I mean, you know, I walk around and there's stuff in people's yards that I go, well, I wouldn't want that in my yard. But, you know,
And it's not a sign, and it's like, well, you know, it's not my yard. So. But you're right, I mean, I'm toying with the idea, I'm playing with the idea in my head of all, yes, I don't want one of those monster signs that when you drive down M6 and you see a huge sign that's the side of a semi truck trailer, or you go down M89 and see a large sign. Yeah, I don't think that's appropriate in our community, so I'm understanding what you're saying.
And we're trying to, when you think about, the number one thing that came up in the surveys was keeping that small town charm. Small town charm is not seeing, you know, big old signs in everyone's
Right.
yard. So,
And at some point in time, everybody has different thresholds, right? The sea of small signs is gonna become a problem, so. I happen to agree, it's not a problem now, and I don't want it to be a problem, but it'd be nice to have some, pick a big number, right? But have some kind of limit out there that we can adjust up or down if it does start to become a problem, right? Because we all know what happens, especially around election times. Anyway.
I think the key to what you said is pick a big number.
Yep.
I could go with that. And then if it.
We can tune it one way or the other.
Exactly. Move it up or down.
That's why I said I like the framework to have.
to
the
give him an
ability to-
idea of what would it, would you consider a big number? 32, 48?
10.
Just so we can try to get it to where we have a draft that we could look at.
Sure, no, I appreciate what you're saying.
Like, think about how many signs you'd have in a really contested election season, like, and it could be a lot, right? So to me, I want to be able to be free about how many I put in my yard, or governor, attorney general, a ballot initiative, local candidates, so.
So if each one is,
What's the standard campaign sign? What size is your signs? Those are the.
for some reason I thought they were 2 by 2.
No, they're longer than,
Not quite
I
square.
think the 2 by
Yeah.
3.
That's what I
thought they
figured.
were longer than they were high, no?
I would say that covers it. I don't think it's 2 feet tall. I think it's more like 18, but and maybe.
18 by,
Like
yeah, it
24?
comes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Something like
yeah,
that.
it's something.
Most of them are gonna be right, what's that?
18 by 12.
Oh, that's a standard, 18 by 12?
12, wow.
I was thinking it was like each one was 4, so
The other ones
know.
are 24 by 18.
24
next
by,
size up.
yeah, that's why. 'Cause I didn't think it was a total square, but so you're at 3 or 4 square feet per side. So if somebody wanted to have, let's say it's 4 square feet maximum per sign, you want to be able to have 8 of them, that's 32. If you want to be able to have 12, it'd be 48.
Those are two numbers. I'm back to what you said about a single sign that's 48 square feet.
Yeah.
But that's off the.
Jesus.
we're all
That's
gonna-
why we,
off the
that's why we're
table.
saying that any sign can't be bigger than like 6 square feet.
Defining each one, yeah, each one max is 6.
Okay.
The max is 6, now we wanna know how many next 6.
So you could have 8 6-foot signs if it's 48. Or you could have, if you have 3, you'd have 16 of the 1.5 by 2 foot ones. So is 48 too big? I realize this is semantics, but you gotta put a number in there, so it's.
It's a good starting point.
I'll say 48.
Like 448.
Trey, we got a consensus of 48, no sign could be more than 6 square feet.
Perfect. Just making a note of it. That's good. And that's just, you guys are talking temporary signs, right? Temporary.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. How do we feel about the current size and square footage and number limitations for the other types of signs? Understanding that most of them are pretty close to what's in the current sign regulations, but they are a little bit more complicated, and they're also harder to phase out as a nonconformity. For example, like if we allow a freestanding sign of 48 square feet, and then we decide to dial that back, that 48 square foot sign that was approved would be non-conforming. So just, I mean, like that's a reason why we tried to align with what's currently in place. So just trying to turn the discussion to that and see if there's any thoughts.
Where would that be? Is you talking about the freestanding one? It's on page 4.
Yeah, so it would be, if you're in my memo, it would be,
On page 41 is what we're talking about, where you get the total area is 32 square feet.
yep.
That's where I was coming up with the number 32 before, but it was.
So I'm looking at like sections 3 and 4 of my memo, which would be signs allowed in residential zoning districts and signs allowed in non-residential zoning districts. It's a lot of like freestanding signs, attached signs, banners, sandwich boards, those types of signs. It's what's currently in place. So like if there's no desire to tweak that, I think that's totally okay. But like I mentioned earlier, this is the best time if the city wants to, relax its square footage requirements or make them stricter. We could discuss that.
That's right, that's right, man.
Yep.
It's not broken.
And that was, so that's how it's currently written. I don't have an issue in leaving that one the same.
Yep.
So that would still just be the 0.25 square foot per linear foot of property frontage, so maximum of 32.
Right.
Yep.
Right now, we have in the neon sign section, it's got blanks in there. Do we want to have like a limit? Because now a neon sign is definitely different, where I don't think we have one any business or even, because that's actually the non-residential. It would be allowed to have, 30 feet.
The typical neon sign I can think of is the simple ones that say open.
And most of them say open, or you may have you may advertise a little bit more your business. I've never really seen one that's more than like a 3 by 4 or something like that.
Yeah, I think
12 to 16 feet. Kind of
Grab and Go
maximum.
might have one. Yeah, they have one that's intricate. I think that's nice.
And isn't, maybe the word neon is outmoded with, now we have LED also, signs?
I think they would be different, and then correct me if I'm wrong, because that's a good question. I didn't really think about that, but I think an LED sign would fall under like the illumination requirements in the ordinance, which most, if not all, a sign illumination is prohibited. Where neon, I think, is like the tube, multicolored stuff, more of an ambient glow than a LED light. I think, not meant to light up the street block.
Wow. Okay, but a lot of the newer, I'm just gonna use open signs. A lot of the newer open signs have the individual little, I think they're LED.
I think the
So,
technology's
Those are
moving
cool.
to that.
right,
Yeah,
I
to
mean,
the-
I think neon is outmoded. I'm sorry.
No, you're right. And you can get LED tubes now that can emulate.
Wow.
But I think neon is still the verbiage that's used by like the Supreme Court when they're addressing a lot of these things too. So I don't know if we just
Oh, you
wanna,
would know?
I think
Okay.
Trent would know too, but.
I think neon, I've always thought of them as two different things too. I think it's a good point, but I think, Mark's point is well taken. Like, we don't want to accidentally prohibit, an open sign because it's using LEDs instead of a neon bulb, so I think that's, something we should probably consider a little bit there too. And it might come from maybe relaxing some of the sign regulation, or relaxing some of the, illumination requirements, because currently they're pretty strict. Like, there's almost nothing that can be lit up. I think that's in the prohibited sign section, if anyone's trying to follow along.
Yeah,
It's like number 8 or something.
the one thing that Steve said earlier was like somebody who puts your entire storefront window a single huge neon sign that.
Why don't we just kind of make the definition of neon more broad and permissive then, and just try and incorporate that there,
Exactly.
and then we're in a good spot.
Because we could make
I
it
think
like
so.
neon slash LED.
Yeah, I think just you keep it as neon, and then when you define neon in this section, we make it broad.
Bring the
Yeah,
new technology into it.
exactly. Yeah, incorporate it in there.
Neon means, or other than neon.
I think that's a really good idea. So I'll make a note of that and do that for the next draft.
Makes sense in my head.
What do you think it would be? 12
Where-
square feet? That's a 3x4,
Yeah.
6x2. You don't see a lot of huge.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to think of.
It's
That's not
expensive.
bad. If somebody wrote the whole name, 2x6 would be more than enough, but yeah. I think 6 is a number I support.
All right, so we can go with 12 on that.
12
We
square.
can always
feet?
change it if you.
12,
You're
12
12
square feet.
feet.
3x4, okay. Yeah, that's gross. Enough. Next.
Then. I know you had blanks here on the murals. I don't know. I guess,
Yep.
wouldn't the mural be kind of the same as what a neon would be then?
So a mural is typically like a painting on a side exterior of a wall.
Now, is that just like if it's advertising a business, or is that meaning? Even like, okay, we have a whole side of the building, it's got a Sagatuck sign on it. Or so, it says Sagatuck with the rainbow and stuff like that, where Baldi's used to be. Is that considered a mural, or is that public art? Considered public art, but.
I think they're the same. I think they're kind of one and the same. I think public art can be a mural. And I think they're kind of, we would potentially be regulating those types of things through murals. Yeah, I had a situation one time where there was a painting like that of a name on a building, and it sort of straddled the definitions between a wall sign and a mural. So I think there's some ambiguity there. But the typical idea and what this draft is made to do currently is only allow murals in the classical sense of like a painting, like an artistic painting on the side of a wall. And it can't have any basis for advertising or identifying a business. So it can't be like a big billboard on the side of a building.
Right.
Is that, we're gonna get into the issues with window painting? I'm thinking, I know Wix or Wally's and Happy Stand, they have window painting where they paint their windows.
Well, we also had an issue where somebody was talking about they were painting their sidewalk out in front of it.
Oh, yeah.
Was that, is that advertising the business?
So I don't think sidewalk stuff would fall into this, but I do think that's a good question, though.
Sell inside.
The window painting, yeah.
Somebody brought it up to us where. It was public walkway and they were saying, 75% off, but it was written in chalk on the sidewalk.
So for the window painting point, I think that's a good point. What if I think what would maybe help is if we added some sort of permanent language to the definition that would make it so that a mural is like a permanent painting on the side of a building, so you would then kind of exclude your like window paints that are usually temporary. I think almost always temporary.
Yeah, they do them seasonally.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, some of these also would overlap with the historic district.
I was just gonna say that you may want to check the historic district ordinance, because we had a situation where somebody wanted to paint the side of a historic building and the historic district
Didn't allow it. They took it down.
refused it. I'm not sure of the interplay, but I'd hate to have a building owner come and say, hey, under the sign ordinance, I'm allowed to paint a mural, and the historic district be damned.
They should be able to coexist though.
Absolutely, but you've got to have them reference each other or something, I would think.
Yeah, so we currently have the mural provision to say they must receive all necessary approvals to be installed, including permission from the city's historical district commission.
Oh, okay, all right.
But I do think that you make a good point that we should probably
see it
make
either.
sure that we're not conflicting with any other regulations that they may have.
Okay.
Because yeah, I'll look into that just to confirm it, but
Okay,
it's a good point.
thank you.
So are there currently any murals in the city that you guys can think of?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the size? Because I struggle with this when I was thinking about it, and I think it's worthy of discussion. Like, what's a sort of typical size that you see, and like, would we be like, could we get close to it with a ballpark limit, or do we want to limit the size?
That's the one I'm thinking of.
15 by 20?
On the bathrooms?
15 by
Yeah.
20, it's probably.
Yeah,
It's the size of a one-story building.
and the bathrooms, Craig just said.
Right.
Yeah, because we have some of our public restrooms are painted, like,
Is there something outside of the
There
annex
are.
too?
and that's where I said, is it a sign or is that actually an art display?
There is. Something on the annex. as
Yeah,
well.
I don't know what it is. I'm blanking. Yeah, there's a lot. But yeah, building size stuff.
Mhm.
They would probably have, there's 300 square feet. Now one, you got 20 by 15. 20 by 15. 20 by 12, so 240 square feet.
I just don't, do we have to have a size?
And that's why I was wondering, and again, is that really a mural or is that something that's done for public art? You know, it's like you got public art on the side of a building. That's not really a sign.
But I
Maybe a
don't,
sign is when you're advertising the business.
Yeah,
But if you're painting, somebody wants to paint like they did there, a sunrise, I'm like, well,
Okay, so
but then it becomes like, well, are they?
I'll
gonna
play the
maintain
devil
it?
here, right? So then now somebody's gonna paint on the side of a building the face of a political
I
leader.
know.
but
I know, I'm trying to fix a problem that hasn't happened.
It hasn't happened, but you're just trying to say, that would stop somebody from doing it.
Well, everybody's got different interpretations of art.
I think that's gonna be really contention in the area that's already covered by the historic district, so I think that's gonna be fine. I mean, if someone wants to put that on the side of their house, they could, all power to them, right?
I mean, because these are only the non-residential, and for the most part, we've only got a few buildings that sit on a corner that even have the capability of doing it. Where Baldy's was one. I can think there's several, though, that's.
Land Sharks wanted to build to paint a mural on their side. I'm assuming, as I recall, the side that faces Wally's, so the alley. So that's not on a corner. I mean, it's a corner technically, but it faces the alley. And they were refused.
Yeah, because I know there's been a couple.
By the
of-
historic district?
Yes.
Okay.
And the alley to Chantel's that goes back behind the alley, there's some advertisement murals that are old.
The old ones.
Right.
No, we've got a number of murals in the city currently.
Yeah, and I think that's good discussion. And there's no requirement that we put a max in there. I just, wanted to have some discussion. It doesn't sound like there's a great consensus for putting a maximum square footage in there. So maybe, leave that out for now. It's important that we include murals because if we don't, anything that's not included is prohibited kind of thing. So we should at least address them, even if we're not gonna.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think that's at least where the blanks were, unless there's one I missed, Trent.
No, I think we've hit a lot of the blanks, and I think just generally speaking, aside from that, the direction we've gotten is pretty good. So I really appreciate it. I think it's been some good discussion. I did provide that, like I said, the highlighted version of the blanks for the actual ordinance format, which is on page 62. So I'm just gonna flip through that quick and see if there's any more quick ones we can hit. But like portable signs, which would be like a truck that is kind of a sign. Sometimes you see like the real narrow sort of trailer on the truck. They're under prohibited signs currently. And the way it's set up is that it would allow these signs, unless they exceed a certain size. And it allows them then if they're only parked for temporary, and unloading or loading purposes. But there's currently in the draft, I'm looking at page 67, there's a blank for, the total square footage and for the time. And I'm just wondering if we want to keep those or get rid of those for the trucks. And if that's like even an issue that you guys encounter. I think maybe Ryan had mentioned including something on this, but I could be misremembering because it was back in June.
They certainly are problems in other cities. I mean, you see the flatbeds with basically a billboard driving around.
Right.
Um,
So it's, most of those are, if you do see one, usually like 6x8. So I could, if you're gonna have a limit, I could go back to like a 48, but I think time wise is where the issue comes in. I wouldn't want to ever see one more than 6 or 8 hours in one place.
And maybe that's all we do is we just prohibit them for a certain, because it's like, they're going to be limited size wise just by the vehicle itself. It can't be unlimited size and still be mobile. So maybe that's enough then, is just a time limit. It's not one of those non-conforming issues because they're not like permanent signs. So we could tweak it and have some changes there that would not create non-conformities. But 6 to 8 hours, does that sound reasonable for kind of a placeholder for now?
Perfect.
I think so.
Sure.
So a vehicle that's got a temporary sign on it, you're saying can be parked somewhere for 8 hours?
Right, a portable sign vehicle, so a vehicle that is itself a sign. It's not necessarily just a sign on the side.
No, I understand. And they can, see, I'm thinking about them driving around, not parked. I mean, they,
That's where you see it in events. They'll drive around that other event.
Right, it's hard to regulate.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's.
Exactly.
But you can, that is something you can regulate though, I believe, if we wanted to.
I'd do it by size for one thing, or I don't know.
But I don't know if it's one of those things, is it necessary?
It discriminates since we can't use content. How do you distinguish between
If it's
a bus that has the name of the.
Wasn't there like some New York City case, Trent, or something like that? Where
I
they
couldn't quite hear the question. Could you repeat it?
about vehicle billboards, the vehicles that just drive around with effectively moving billboards, and how there's a,
It does sound familiar, but I don't want to shoot from the hip on it.
I know, same.
Yeah.
How does that relate to wrapped vehicles? There's a couple different companies there have their vehicles wrapped with their names and pictures on them. Is
That's
that-
what I mean.
Yeah.
A bus, a tour bus coming
Yeah.
in, it's got an advertisement on the side, right? You can't use the content to distinguish the
Right.
two, so.
So if they're parked for temporary loading and unloading, like a tour bus, they'd be exempt from it. But I understand the point that there's potentially some collateral damage here that we should probably think about. Also, just the way it reads right now, portable signs, including signs affixed to a vehicle or a truck trailer, it seems like it would actually prohibit, like a giant, like a Meyer truck, for example, that has Meyer on the side. So maybe that needs some tweaking in general, but just for purposes of filling in the blanks, it sounds like we don't have a square footage limit, but we do think we maybe have a time limit on parking.
Kind of where my head's
If it's
going.
parked, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. Perfect.
And there's none of those that, even a tour bus is not gonna be parked longer than 8 hours. A Meyer truck, even if you somehow fell in that category.
but I
it's not gonna-
hate to throw the guess what out there, but we do see construction trailers left overnight on the city streets.
There's definitely a couple realtors with wrapped vehicles
Those
that
too.
park there.
Yep.
Or we just take the whole portable sign thing out and just deal with it when it happens.
That's an option too.
Do what? Just
Just ignore
take
it.
the entire portable
I would-
sign out
I wouldn't.
and then just deal with it when it comes out. All
Fine, fine with me.
It's not a problem
right,
right now.
you got that, Trent?
Yep, got it. It makes my job a lot easier. So
That's what we're here for.
Just flipping down to the top of 67, and I'll try and go fast here. I appreciate how long it's been, and you can stop me if you want to push it to another meeting. But flags. There's been a lot of discussion between David in my office and Grayson about flags, and just wondering if there's any consensus. Right now, we have it so that residential uses could each have a for per dwelling unit. So if you have like a two family, like a duplex, it would be two. You could double it. Could have up to 3 flags, not to exceed blank square feet. No more than 1 flag may be attached to the dwelling unit itself, and no more than 2 flags may be displayed per flagpole. Under no circumstances should it exceed 3 flags per dwelling unit. So like again, a duplex could theoretically have 6 flags, and you can only have 1 attached to your house, so you have a limit there, and you can have 2 per flagpole. So theoretically, a duplex could have 2 flagpoles with 2 flags each, and then 2 flags attached to the building, for a total of 6 flags on a 2-family dwelling.
I know an awful lot of residential homes that have multiple flags hanging attached to them. One being decorative, one being, their favorite college or whatever, right? It's usually surrounding like garage doors or something like that. I don't know if we want to consider upping that to 2, but.
Yeah, I had a hesitation about 1 flag actually attached to the house. You know, if you get 3 flags, why do I care how they're displayed?
Because maybe I don't have a flagpole, but I wanna,
I'm sorry?
maybe I don't have a flagpole, but I wanna display my 3 flags.
Right.
And if I wanna attach it to my house in some way.
It's my house.
But. So again, I don't have an issue with it. Again, I think the size of it.
What do you think?
If we're looking at. What's the largest flag? It's like 3x5.
3x5 is big.
So if we kind of stayed with, the 3 and the 40, we were using 48 for the other type of things. If you had 3x5 flags, that's 45 feet.
Yeah. Seems reasonable to me.
So I would kind of stay with the 48 there.
Perfect. And then I think I heard like maybe just delete the stuff about no more than 1 flag per dwelling unit.
Yeah.
So you could have 3 however you want to have them. Maybe two per flagpole. But is that a limit we maybe want?
No,
I mean, truthfully, if they can get 3 on it, and
I don't do it.
Are we okay with 3? I know that there's a couple along the river that are maybe like the sailboat things that have like 5 flags on them, the masts. Yeah, that will like have, a Navy,
because that's where I'm like,
Michigan,
if
the
you're gonna
US
put a limit of
Navy.
48. And you say that, you're gonna say like no flag can be over a certain size, then do we care how many flags they have?
Yeah. I don't wanna create unnecessary friction because I don't think people are taking advantage of it.
Well, except the boat you're talking about boats in the water.
No, I'm talking about people who will have like the sail masts that are kind of stuck in the ground. I'm thinking along the river, there's some people.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
We have pennants where you have.
Pennants, yeah.
National state flag, and then usually.
Right.
Could be the yacht club flag, and could be
Yeah.
a university flag, and then having pennants with it.
And not that the American Legion plans on doing it anytime soon, but like if we ever wanted to put up an Army, Navy, Air Force, American flag, there's 4 already right there.
Yeah.
So maybe we don't.
I like to stick.
So if you stay with the square footage is the same as the temporary sign. And then you just want to try to have a maximum size though, because again, you don't want to have somebody who puts up a 6x8
Yeah.
flag.
The car dealership flag.
Yeah, so the question is, are we 48 residential and then maybe a larger number for commercial? I mean. For non-residential, I mean.
Is there a provision about?
Shore is a yard arm, right? And they fly the state.
Yeah.
The federal flag, they fly a Marine Corps flag, they fly a.
That's what I'm
they
thinking
fly
of,
all
right
the
by the
armed
pool
services.
there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Okay.
I mean, that's tasteful.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with the size and have it. Don't put a limit on it until people are.
But the question
Kind
is,
of
do we need
hear
to
all
give
that
them more
trend?
than 45?
We're just gonna go with this individual sign limit size and then let them put as many as they want.
More than 45 flags?
Well, no, 45 square feet,
Oh,
I'm saying for non-residential, you'd want to go over.
a bigger
45.
number. That's what I'm saying. I'm not sure that's,
I think that's fine.
I'm
So
okay.
in residential,
I'm okay with that.
48, and then if it's commercial, no limit? Still limit on size.
Using over there.
Not a problem now.
I mean, all of it, I see what happens, but I can't imagine that. Can't imagine it ever being an issue.
You can, I.
I don't see people eagerly awaiting this ordinance to see what they can.
Exactly, it's like,
Let's take the limit off that of being residential. You guys okay with that?
Okay, so we're thinking no limit on no limit on commercial, 48 square feet max on residential with a
Right.
flag specific limit, like 24 square feet per flag or something.
Yep.
Okay.
I think 24 is good because that's 2 4x6 flags.
exactly.
And you go online, you can buy a 4x6 flag pretty easily. They are, mine are 3x5, but you can get a 4x6 pretty easily.
Yeah, so theoretically you could have 2 24 square foot flags max. That's it.
That's it.
Okay, perfect. And then no limit on commercial, or I guess it would be non-residential uses for flags. Okay. We'll just cut that out.
We'll change it next month, but for right now, that's what we're going with.
That's awesome.
And that too, although we're doing the heavy lifting.
Swore we're gonna be done within 2 hours, so we gotta hurry.
Say what?
Yeah, like I said, I've got enough to get a pretty good draft back to you guys. So if you want to call it there, I'm fine with that. But if you want to keep going, I can keep going.
No, I think we can call it at this. I think most of us wanted to try to hit a 2 hour limit on this meeting, so,
Great. And didn't we basically cover everything? I mean, we're kind of out of blanks.
Took a good swing.
Yeah, I think we did. I'm pretty, I think it was a good discussion. So thank you. Appreciate you guys' time. Super helpful.
Thank you, Trent.
you.
The additional signing permits, just the last thing that I do see on here is from his memo.
The additional option.
We need to do,
section?
well, yeah, where somebody could go get a permit, but by the other things, we're gonna eliminate that requirement.
I think we can eliminate it, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Then I'm done.
Sure.
I feel you hit all my marks. Perfect.
Did you catch that, Trent? Your last provision in the memo?
would not be necessary. The
Okay. Yep, sounds good.
Great. That closes out signs, communication. I didn't have anything in the kit. I don't believe we had any communication, so that's report of officers, non-public comments. We have no one in the room, no one online, so close out public comments, down to commissioner comments. Craig?
None for me, thank you.
None for me. Thank you.
I'll just quickly welcome Grayson because I wasn't here last month. So I talked to him at the open house, but glad to have you aboard.
I just mentioned at our council meeting that all of us wanted to reach out and thank the staff for all the work they put in for our open house, and so
Great.
do it here as well.
Yeah.
And you all as well.
It was, yeah.
A lot of great things in town. The chili cook-off was great. The open house is great. So there's been a lot of good community getting together things. So appreciate all that. Thanks.
No, and I think I was in closing, I was gonna say the same thing about, the staff did a great job in advertising the survey. I think David and all of us are pleased with the number of responses that we got, especially considering it was 30 minutes, approximately to fill it all out. The open house, I think, Sarah and Jamie and everyone kind of went over even expectation, of getting everything set up. It worked out very well. Dave, you brought in some really great poster boards. We all had, I think, a nice evening. And I just wish we could have got the commercial record to show up and take a couple of photos, but hey, you know what? We could only try. But otherwise, I think it's been really positive. Wish everybody a nice Halloween coming up, and we'll see you right in November for my comments. With that,
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great.